welcome to my studio. But we're not going to stay in the studio for long because today we're going on a class outing. I'm going to take you plein air painting and we're going to have a look around the seaside town of Port Alfred and maybe do a bit of outdoor painting on the beach. But before we leave the studio and hit the road, let's just show you briefly what I do for painting kit when I go and paint outdoors. Try to keep things very simple, and this is probably my simplest setup that I can manage. First item, tripod. This is not to hold the camera, but I probably will need another one to do that if I'm going to show you some video. But this is in fact to carry my paint box. This little camera screw can fit onto a bracket under my painting box, and I'll show you that in a moment. I have a basic piece of luggage like this. This is just a regular suitcase with shoulder straps. If you have a bit more money to spend, get one with wheels on. This one doesn't have wheels. So this can basically carry everything I need and more. There's space for a few luxuries as well. But first and most important is the paint box itself. This is a paint box that I converted. It's basically not a made up plein air paint box. I took an ordinary paint box, took out the compartments, put a hinge to hold the lid in place, a couple of little brackets down here I got from the hardware store that the painting panel fits in, and I use the bottom of the box as the pallet. It's quite cheap to do, and it's probably the painting box that I use the most. The main trick to this box is this aluminium bracket with the camera facility here to screw in the tripod screw over there. Now, you can have this made, you can order them online as well. You can buy camera screw attachments from photo shops. You can probably find it online as well, and you can get and you can make these up yourself. Might seem like a lot of trouble, but actually buying a paint box like this already made up for you can set you back a lot of money, and I like the challenge, and I always say I'd rather spend the money on some good paints and brushes. One other thing I did was add a thick plywood base, just glued it on to the bottom of the paint box because the normal base of the paint box is very thin. So I needed a thicker one to screw in this base plate and etc., and it gives it a bit of strength. So I glued on a thick piece of plywood, about 1 centimeter thick, and just sanded the edges, gave it a coat of varnish, and I have a very nifty little paint box. So the next thing you need is something to paint on, and I use a couple of Mdf panels that I have cut at a timber shop. And these are the panels. 2 panels like this, you can see just MDF. A couple of coats of gesso on the front, acrylic gesso, and that's it, ready to go. And very simple, I just pop them into the paint box. If I can get my hands on one of them. As you'll see when I do the demonstration, it just pops into the paint box like this with the little brackets at the bottom to hold it in place. And it withstands strong winds, anything like that, is actually quite secure in its little, in the lid compartment there. And take it out, and you can put it in a wet panel carrier if you have one, or just lay it very carefully in your car. But there are ways to carry wet panels quite cheaply, even if you don't have a fancy wet panel carrier box. And I'll show you that little tip right now. So if you've got a couple of panels you've painted on and you need to transport them easily and effectively, you can simply use the old matchstick method. Put a matchstick at the corner on the wet side of the panel. You can take another one and put it on top now, and those matches act as spacers. And then just take an elastic band and put it around, and hold thumbs, and it all works. And then you can carefully take them apart back at the studio. You might have to do a little bit of touch up here and there, but you're going to do that at the studio anyway. It's seldom that plein air work is perfectly complete straight off at the scene. There's a few little things you're going to touch up anyway. So that's how you can do that very inexpensively. I've got my panels. I've got some latex gloves for keeping paint and solvents off my hands, and it also, at the end of it, make sure you have clean hands. If you're going to get back into your car, you don't have to fuss about cleaning your hands and getting paint on things. Brushes. I take a few brushes along, basically these 4. I think it's a number 8, 2 number 6s, and a little rigger type of brush. Comes in handy for a few things. In the final stages, my roll of pencils and felt tip markers for sketching and composing the scene in a little sketchbook. Tissue paper in one form or another. You constantly having to clean your brushes with tissue paper. I seldom clean them with terps or anything like that on location. Having said that, I do take along some odorless white spirits if I need a medium and in the early stages of the painting. With the paints, just take a bunch of paints along. Standard colors, all the primary colors, as you may know by now, titanium white as well, and a few convenience colors like burnt sienna and cadmium orange. Sometimes handy to have it in a tube and not have to mix it. Basically 2 blues, a cool blue like cerulean and a warm one like, ultramarine blue. 2 reds, warm and cool again, cad red light and alizarin crimson for a cool. Yellows, warm and cool, cad lemon is cool, and a deep yellow of any variety will take care of the warm yellow. Burnt sienna and yellow ochre, nice to have, convenient as well. Pallet knife, very important. Take a couple if you can. You've got to keep cleaning your palette off as well to make space to mix paint. Also to obviously do some painting with the palette knife. So that is very handy. Plastic packets to throw away tissue paper and any other mess you make. Leave the scene clean and no littering, obviously. A little sketchbook and something to help with composition. Anything, a square cut out piece of cardboard to help you compose. If you have nothing to help isolate your composition, just using your fingers will help as well. And that is about it. As straightforward as that. I like to try and get a small painting like this 10 by 12 done in about 40 minutes from start to finish. and then I fine-tune it back in the studio. So that's it. But have obviously your cell phone with you. Take a few pictures, share them on social media, and also record your progress. It can be helpful to see what you did at the time as well. So simple setup. Now let's get out the studio, get outdoors, and see if there's something worthwhile to paint.